Welcome to All Things Work. I'm your host, Ann Spiracco. For this episode, we're recording at SHRM 25, our annual conference in sunny San Diego. And today we're exploring spirituality in the workplace, specifically its impact on employee mental wellness and work outcomes. And joining us to talk about that today is Dr. Kenny Felix, an associate professor of counseling at Liberty University, as well as a licensed therapist and ordained minister. Welcome to All Things Work, Dr. Felix.
Thank you, Ann. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Dr. Felix, you are presenting on this exact topic at SHRM 25. We're very excited about your session. So let's dive straight into it for some clarification. How would you define spirituality in the context of the workplace? Because we know a lot of people have different views on this.
When we speak of spirituality, we're talking about finding purpose. We're talking about connecting with the world around us. We're talking about having that harmony, that inner peace. We're talking about what we find purposeful and meaningful. And when we look at the workplace, what we do at work should be purposeful. It should be meaningful. We should be able to connect in a way where we feel fulfilled by the relationships that we developed in the work setting. It's not just about accomplishing the task, but it's about being able to enjoy and find that task meaningful within the work setting, which is different, let's say, than if we're speaking of religion. Religion is public, or religion involves having a prescribed belief set, certain rituals and traditions tied to that specific religion. But with spirituality, we're talking about something that is more personal. What do we find sacred? What do we find meaningful? And that's how we distinguish the two, especially in the context of the workplace.
Why is it so important to make this distinction when it comes to the workplace setting?
It's very important to make that distinction, because people are going to work. They're not going to temple. They're not going to church. They're not going to the mosque, but that is part of who they are. At the work setting, what you're trying to do is create a workplace where people can be themselves, but yet in this very respectful atmosphere. What we're talking about is where individuals are able to find those things that are meaningful to them and find those things that are purposeful for them, and being able to find expression in the work that they do. When we speak of spirituality, we're talking about not a sacred belief set, but we're talking about broader definitions of meaning, greater definitions of purpose, greater definitions of what persons find sacred. And so there can be expression of this within the work setting without necessarily prescribing a particular belief set within that work setting for all employees.
Wonderful. And so can you ground us in some of the research and statistics you are sharing in your presentation about the relevance of spirituality in the workplace?
Sure. And the reason that we're talking about spirituality in the workplace is because we're talking about employee wellness. We know that today, a significant portion of the population are dealing with, from mental illness to just daily stressors that individuals experience. And what research shows us is that wellness and spirituality, there's a correlation there. What we find is that where individuals are able to practice or have their spiritual practices, wellness increases. Their ability to cope increases. They are able to experience greater resilience, greater life satisfaction overall. And coincidentally, where spirituality is practiced, depression levels are also lower. Anxiety levels are also lower. The suicide rate is lower. The use of substance abuse, rather, is also lower. And so a positive correlation as to contributing to wellness. And then when it comes to mental illness, we see that it has a positive impact in decreasing mental illness.
And I would love to dive a little deeper into, the mental well-being that workplace stress can really take a toll, as you mentioned. And SHRM even has research from earlier this year on mental health. It found 31% of U.S. workers feel stress often or always because of their job. And younger workers, which were ages 18 to 34 reported the highest levels of stress at 37%. How might spirituality-based opportunities help minimize workplace stress, especially for that younger age group?
Well, again, that younger age group, from particularly, are looking for places where they find meaning. They're not just looking to work 9 to 5. It has to be purposeful. It has to bring meaning into their lives. And so when we associate spirituality with wellness, if spirituality can have a positive impact on wellness, then what can that look like within the workplace, where people are able to, again, find work that is meaningful, find connections that bring a satisfaction, where they find, again, purpose and are able to connect with other coworkers, for example, other employees there at their job sites. And so with spirituality and the practice of different exercises, for example, that can bring coping mechanisms, or that could bring ways for workers to decrease their stress levels, and especially if they are finding their work meaningful, where their values are consistent with the values of the organization they work for.
And that's really great for employers to lead with inclusion in this area, because you want everybody to feel like their own spiritual type journey, no matter how they view it, may be different from me or you, feel included in that type of practice.
No, inclusion is the key. Again, we're not talking about religion here.
Exactly.
We're not talking about being prescriptive to the workforce, but we're talking about being inclusive. We're talking about creating the setting that embraces individuals' spirituality, and where they can basically be themselves
Yes.
while respecting their colleagues, while embracing the inherent value of their associates and workers throughout.
Exactly. That safe space is so important. So I would love to dive into team collaboration and productivity, because we know that this can have impact on it. So can you discuss how you see trust, integrity, and openness, which I know you're discussing in your presentation here at Term 25, impacting team collaboration productivity?
Sure. And core values associated with spirituality are indeed
Yes.
integrity, honesty, and respect. And so when these are definitely present in the workplace, when there's trust, there's collaboration. If I can trust you, I can work with you. If I can trust you, I don't have to fear to ask for your assistance or to ask for your perspective in solving an issue. And so that creates a psychological safe work setting, a psychological safe workplace. And where there is safety, there's greater collaboration, there's greater openness. And what we find also is that again, those are the seeds to allow for greater levels of compassion, greater levels of empathy within the workforce, greater levels of kindness. And that ability to connect in a wholesome way to a coworker is very important in the work settings. And it's been associated with greater productivity and greater employee engagement as a whole.
It's funny, we was just speaking to SHRM CHRO the other day, Jim Link, when he was doing an interview, and he was asked, what's one of the most important qualities in a business leader? And he says, empathetic leadership takes you very far. So I love that connected to that conversation as well.
No, absolutely. And it starts with leadership.
It does.
The ability for an organization to thrive and definitely create a safe workplace begins with leadership. Leaders have to be able to listen and understand. And that's how we get to empathy.
Exactly. You don't have to relate entirely, but being able to understand
Absolutely.
and being open to that is so important. And so we know employee fulfillment and retention, is a big part when it comes to just keeping that wonderful talent, keeping them happy as well, and wanting them to stay in their workplace. So going back to that mental health research I mentioned earlier, there's more to it. So 60% of workers fulfilled by their jobs are not actively searching for new roles. Not very surprising, because when you feel that fulfillment, you're not looking to fill that gap anywhere else. However, it's compared to 40% of unfulfilled workers who obviously are looking for something else. So can you share an example or two of an organization that has successfully woven spirituality-based opportunities into their workplace culture to improve that employee fulfillment and retention?
Sure. One company that comes to mind is Patagonia. Patagonia reflects a spiritual ethos of rejecting greed and embracing service. And how do they do this? They encourage their their employees rather, to go out into the community and actually serve. And that is part of their workday. Patagonia places emphasis on protecting the environment. So here we're talking about corporate responsibility, having a positive impact and not just focusing on the profits. And in doing so, we see that this company with 3,000 employees, yet uh, focusing on these spiritual values, we could say, they are yet very profitable. Estimated $1.5 billion in revenue in 2022. When we think of even a company like Google, that again allow for innovation, allow for openness, allow for their employees to engage in mindfulness exercise. Google has a wonderful program that it started back in 2007 called Search Inside Yourself program. It was actually designed by one of their engineers that incorporates aspects of mindfulness and emotional intelligence training, and it helps employees develop greater coping skills. It helps employees develop skills like empathy, self-awareness, and effective communications and resilience. All of these are great examples. Other companies also focus more on, let's say, work-life balance to give their workers, their employees, the opportunity to engage again in the community or engage in their faith practices outside of the workday. Companies focus on servant leadership. For companies focus on hospitality and stewardship, and as for management, leading with dignity, leading with care, leading with empathy. And so these are specific ways that companies can again reflect that spiritual ethos or create a workplace that is embracive of spiritual values that are diverse in nature.
Do you have any examples of companies successfully doing that where people feel like they were able to express it and relate to other people as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Google again. I think everyone has probably heard a little bit about this company.
Yeah, I think
Google
so.
is again a great example where they not only offer the mindfulness programs, they not only offer meditation spaces for their
Yes.
employees, but they also have one that program that called the Interbelief Network. This is where um, employees can actually connect with others from their own backgrounds, or be able to be exposed to um, other employees rather, from their company of diverse backgrounds, to be able to understand more, to be able to hear more, to be able to respect and value more. Apart from this, companies are also doing what we call sharing circles or telling circles, where where employees rather are able to come in, sit down, and share about their lives, connect with one another. And again, where employees are able to feel that they can connect with one another, that leads to what? Greater levels of collaboration, greater levels of cooperation. And so collaboration over competitiveness, but it starts, or one of the contributing factor is me being able to connect with you and you being able to reveal and reflect who you are
Exactly.
in a safe space where we're not judging each other. No, we're just exercising that curiosity to kind of know, hey, if I'm going to be working with you for 1/3 of my life or whatever that season is, then being able to fully appreciate you for who you are, although we're different, but still being able to value you. And so creating that space where employees can, pull away from their desk for a little bit to sit down in a circle or whatever form that a company wants to utilize, just to be able to talk about their lives, to be able to talk about where their experience is. Or sometimes they may just come and say, hey, I'm just grateful for this. And we know that gratitude as a spiritual practice,
Yes.
contributes greatly to well-being.
And I would love to dive a little deeper into, the strategy side because like you said, corporate responsibility here. There's a lot that can be done. So I would love to walk through some practical steps or strategies you'd recommend to HR professionals to develop a workplace culture that really supports, spirituality and employee well-being as well.
again, we have to understand that this effort is not a prescriptive effort, and so it's important to engage employees in the process. Definitely, I would say it starts with leadership being open to the integration, to the include and developing a more inclusive work setting or space. And again, if spirituality has been reflected to correlate with wellness, and being able to develop that setting begins with leadership. So once leadership is on board, then I would say the best thing to do is, again, talk to employees, survey the employees, inquire as to what they need, inquire as to what they desire, inquire as to what they would find meaningful in what the company can provide. And so you're starting from the ground up after you have the leadership support, and then from there create the pilot programs. It's going to look different in every company. What Patagonia does is going to look different than what you may do. What Google does, what other companies do, may look different. And so starting, let's say, with pilot programs that maybe you want to run a mindfulness group or a weekly meditation group. And then from there, begin to scale up based on the feedback that is received from the workers themselves. Companies can also engage and partner with the experts, from chaplains to mindfulness coaches to well-being consultants to counselors specializing in this area, to, again, craft programs that are unique to their specific company, their specific population. And then, of course, companies definitely have to ensure that their policies reflect the inclusion that we're talking about, reflect respect for the diverse spiritual needs within their organization.
And so when HR professionals and company leaders go on this journey starting out with these strategies, what are some potential challenges they may face that maybe they can anticipate and preemptively, prepare for, I guess?
Sure. And I would say the first one is being able to distinguish between spirituality and religion, and being very clear as to what the intent and the effort is, and ensuring that the dialogue is open, the dialogue is transparent, the dialogue is a welcoming of diverse perspectives, and to meet the diverse needs of their employees. I can say that as a minister, as a clinical clinician, as an educator, a lot of people have experience from spiritual trauma to religious trauma, and so this is an area that requires caution.
Yes.
Where we have to realize, just as other areas, we have to realize that we need to be very, very clear, and we need to be patient,
Yes.
as we navigate through the process to ensure that our intent is definitely equals our impact.
So you kind of already touched on what I was kind of going to ask next, which is, what the boundaries might be on maintaining that respect on, spirituality based opportunities. Do you want to dive a little deeper into, how people can make sure that they don't, cross certain boundaries or show any disrespect, even if it's unintentional? Because I am curious, because sometimes our own personal bias can come into play, even if we don't realize it's happening. So how can people create more awareness around that and keep that respectful boundary there?
The first approach is to be open to hear others. In other words, to have a level of curiosity that allows me to, even desire to hear, your experience, your perspective, but at the same time have the respect that while my views may be different, my practices may be different, what I find meaningful may be different than yours, I can still value you as a person because of your inherent value. And we each have the right to be able to exercise our spirituality, our day to day in various ways. So difference doesn't mean that we have to devalue one another, but rather embrace and truly respect one another. The other aspect to this is, again, when we speak about the program itself, the strategies that are implemented by a corporation, by an organization, again, these cannot be prescriptive. In other words, we have to allow employees to decide whether they want to engage in the activity that's being offered or not. When I train students, I tell students that before you even talk about working with a client that is of a different cultural background than yourself, and every counseling exchange is a cross-cultural background because there's no one individual that is uniquely like you. Before we talk about even counseling, let's talk about just being able to sit down and having a cup of coffee with someone and enjoying that aspect. And then we could say that, hey, I'm open to working with various groups. In the same way, in the work setting, having that curiosity and that openness to get to know your coworker, get to know their background, rather than everything that you've heard about that particular group, is one way to lower and to really respect the boundaries.
I love that. Go back to the origins and be curious. Okay, so looking forward to the next 3 to 5 years, how do you see the conversation around spirituality in the workplace evolving?
I definitely believe that spirituality will have an increasing presence. It will be increasingly integrated into corporate well-being programs, into corporate wellness programs. In the counseling world, for example, we've seen a significant shift. When I was back in grad school, not decades ago, but let's say a few years ago,
Okay.
um, addressing spirituality within the counseling context, that was left. You were encouraged to just uh, uh, channel that individual, channel the client to someone else, have them go talk to their priest, have them go talk to their pastor, have them go talk to their imam, their rabbi, and you focus on the psychological aspects. Well, we've seen a significant shift. Today, counselors are trained to be able to meet clients where they are. We even have a whole division within the American Counseling Association that deals with spirituality. I believe in the same way within corporate world, we'll see spirituality being at the table as a very important variable when we address issues related to wellness and well-being. Many organizations are focusing on purpose driven leadership or on soul-centered leadership. Issues related to meaning, issues related to purpose are all again tied into spirituality. And so I definitely believe that rather than being an add-on, it will definitely be almost at the forefront of dialogue and integration when it comes to employee wellness, civility within the workplace, where we can reflect compassion and respect for one another.
And so we talked about openness, we talked about curiosity, and we talked about empathy. What are some final takeaways you'd love our audience to take with them from this conversation?
I truly believe that we're created to thrive. I believe that we're created to enjoy every aspect of our life, and a very important aspect of our life is the work that we do. We speak about wellness because the majority of our awake hours are spent where? They're spent at work, which means that if you do the math, that adds up to about 1/3 of your life is spent at work. So the work setting definitely needs to be a wholesome place. The work setting definitely needs to be a place where people feel connected to others, where people find meaning in what they do, where they feel that they are living out their purpose. And when we think of our work, what we do, it's an expression of our identity, how we view ourselves. And so I truly believe that spirituality can continue to assist us in developing that interconnectedness with others and finding purpose and finding meaning, both at the individual level and as well as the organizational level. And so overall, I can say that when we speak of spirituality, we can speak of the profitability of spirituality in the workplace, where it is a win for workers and the workplace as well.
Goes a long way.
Absolutely.
All right, Dr. Felix, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on this episode. We really enjoyed your insights and this great conversation around inclusion as well.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of All Things Work. Just head to shrm.org/allthingswork for our research as well as our weekly newsletter. You can also follow us on social media, like, share, comment. We want you to be part of the conversation. That'll do it for this week. We'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast so you never miss a new episode. Also, did you know All Things Work is more than a podcast? That's right, we're also a weekly newsletter that includes in-depth articles and the latest research from SHRM to keep you in the know. Just head to SHRM.org/allthingswork to sign up. Plus, follow SHRM on social media to view the latest clips and join the conversation on game-changing topics that are redefining the world of work.
SHRM.